Welcome back to Refit and Sail. This is a Contessa 32, and as you can see, I am back in the tent and the bottom's been sanded because we're going to be applying Coppercoat. Stay tuned for lots of rolling and then more rolling and then more rolling, and she'll slowly change colour. Last time I was in this tent, I was working on the bottom doing the osmosis treatment. Since then, lots of stuff has happened inside this boat. You've probably seen all the videos, or if you haven't, do check out the playlist called Project Lottie. But we're back in the tent because we want to get some anti-fouling on the bottom of this boat. The owner has decided that he would like to have Coppercoat, which is something I've applied to a number of boats. It's a very long-lasting, hard-wearing, fairly maintenance-free anti-fouling product that you can put on, but it needs to be applied in very much a controlled environment. It is a water-based epoxy that has very, very small, fine particles of copper suspended in it, and the application process does need to be done with a degree of care and quite a lot of careful preparation. So this is an epoxy barrier coat that was applied as part of the osmosis treatment, and it's Hempel High Protect. And to apply Coppercoat to this, it all needs to be abraded. Now, you can apply Coppercoat directly onto the gel coat of your hull, but in my experience, applying Coppercoat on top of an epoxy-based coating actually is not a bad idea, because epoxy sticks to epoxy better than epoxy sticks to polyester. So even if I wasn't finishing off a osmosis treatment, I would likely suggest to an owner that we put an epoxy barrier of some sort on his polyester hull before putting Coppercoat on. This has all been abraded with 80 grit discs. The instructions say to abrade between 60 and 120 grit, so 80 is a good way to go. It's a nice happy medium, and it gives a nice key on the surface for the copper to attach to. When it comes to applying, we're going to be applying it with a roller. Some people apply it with a spray, and if you spray it on, as the guys do in this yard here, they do a fantastic job and you get a beautiful, beautiful flat finish. But you can get virtually the same finish with rolling if you suitably thin the material when you apply it. It all needs to be applied in one go, so you apply the Coppercoat wet on tack. So you mix up a first batch, get that on, and by the time you've finished that first batch down one side of the boat, hopefully on a nice warm day like today, you can go back to the start and it'll just be tacky. So if you can touch it and it doesn't come off on your finger, you're ready to put the second coat on, and that's what we're going to be doing today. And the man holding the camera at the moment, my assistant Sean, is going to be helping me, so you'll probably see him at some point in the video as well. If I had lots of manpower, I'd potentially get both sides done, but I've only got an assistant for a few hours today. So what quite often people do when they're applying Coppercoat is they'll do one side on one day, one side on another day, and then the whole thing's done over 2 days. That also saves a bit of arm muscles, because when you're applying multiple coats of Coppercoat, copper's pretty blimmin' heavy, so having a thing you're wanging around above your head for a number of hours, your arm muscles do suffer after a while. So doing one side one day and one side another day is not a bad thing to do. I've done it on a number of boats. The masking is all done. This has all been wiped down, and one of the key things if you are applying Coppercoat is to follow the instructions absolutely to the letter, and do not add in any of your own steps. So for example, they say abrade the hull, and if you're going to wash it down with just water. Do not use any cleaning chemicals on the surface. For example, some people might say, well, stick a bit of washing up liquid in just to help wash it off and degrease it. Don't do that, because washing up liquid has salt in it and you're going to end up leaving salt on the surface. Only use fresh water straight out the tap, wash it all down, wipe it down with a clean lint-free even cloth, and then you end up with a nice clean surface. Then do not touch it with your bare hands, because you will transfer oils and grease off your hands onto the surface. So once it's all clean, stick gloves on and keep gloves on until you're all done. The plan for today is I'm going to set up a time lapse so you can see what happens, because once we start we're just going to have to keep going, but I'll try and record as much as possible. So if you're doing a job like this, it is well worth getting everything you need out on the table and have everything ready to go so you're not having to go searching. So I have got roller trays, I've got the A packs and the B packs of the Coppercoat, I've got some mixing buckets, lots of gloves, mixing sticks, tissue, extra masking tape if I need it, and of course, it's heavy, the copper powder. So I've just got out enough Coppercoat to do the one side for today, and the only thing I'm missing here is my cup of tea. I'm going to be using little 4-inch rollers, and that's partly because I couldn't get any 7-inch rollers of the quality that I wanted. I know these are quite good and don't shed too much. There is one very important thing you ought to do when using one of these short pile rollers. Always try and remove any final bits of fluff. And I do that by getting some masking tape. I wind it around my hand. I know I've shown this on the channel before. Wind it around my hand, and then get my roller and rub it over the masking tape, and it just lifts off any little bits of fluff which will come out in your coating when you apply it if you don't do this, and that's very annoying, especially when you've done all the prep, all the sanding, all the wiping down, all the cleaning. You then get little bits of fluff in it because you haven't cleaned your roller. So that is clean. It's now going to go in the tray, and I'm going to put some gloves on before I touch something with my bare hands and transfer my greasy, oily hand stuff, my human slime, onto the boat. It is time to start mixing up the first batch. This is Sean. Say hello, Sean, everyone. And he's also a Contessa owner and has joined the Solent Boat Butler team for a few days a week, haven't you?
Yeah, it's all early days. There we go.
Exactly. Right, we have Coppercoat. So we've got an A pack and a B pack, and we need to chuck them in the bucket. So we'll start by opening up these, and A is white, like that, and I nearly poured it over my cup of tea then. So we're going to chuck that in the bucket and then give it a good scrape around with a scraper just to make sure we have the whole thing in there. And it's pretty warm today, so we're going to have to be fairly quick about getting this applied once it mixes up. Conditions are critical. As I may have said, this is a water-based epoxy, and that's why I'm in the tent. It is summer at the moment, and it is not forecast to rain, but I just don't want to risk it, so I've brought the boat inside for this job. That can go in the bin or be washed and recycled. Thank you, Sean. So, one A pack, one B pack. This is a lovely golden syrup colour. Chuck that in there. Give it a thorough mix, and you can see when this is all consolidated because it becomes one homogeneous colour rather than streaky, if that makes sense. So it's good that it's two slightly different colours, and then we will make sure we scrape down the sides of the bottle. Sorry, we will make sure we scrape down the sides of the container, scrape around the bottom just to make sure we haven't left any unmixed material. And I apologise about the noise. This is a real life working boatyard and boats are being moved around outside. You might get the odd random person looking in the tent opening to see what's going on in here. That's life. They may not realise they're going to end up on the internet, or they may do, I don't know. Right, when it comes to adding in the copper, we want to add it piece by piece, and slowly it will stir in and consolidate, and we have to put this whole 2 kilo bag of copper powder into the mixture. And if you dump it all in one go, it is not very easy to mix, if I'm honest. if you haven't got a helper, or you're worried about mixing up a full pack, you can mix up half packs or quarter packs or however you want to do it. One way of doing that is to get some little cheap plastic cups or mixing cups and just pour it out into equal amounts into 4 cups of this and another 4 cups of this. And as long as you've got the levels right on each of those cups, you know you've mixed it up equally. And you can, of course, use scales if you want to. That's another way of making sure you have equal amounts. But when it comes to mixing it up, if you do kind of split your batches, you need to make sure you have the appropriate amount of pack A, pack B, hardener and base on the material. Now this is getting thicker and thicker, but when applying this, ideally this needs a good stir up before you put it in your roller tray if you've left it, because the copper is so heavy it will drop down to the bottom of the tin. So in a minute, how are we doing? We're about 3/4 of the way there. You can keep going. Chuck a bit more in, that's it. This is why having an assistant's really, really helpful. Because in a minute, Sean's going to be mixing this and he's going to get an achy arm like I'm starting to get. Because you're actually moving around quite a lot of weight with all the copper that's in suspension in the resin. Whew. Swap hands. I'm getting an achy wrist. There's a joke there, but I'm not going to go there because we keep it clean on Refit and Sail, don't we, Sean?
We try.
We try, but at least on camera. Off camera is a whole different story. Right, just going to have a little scrape around the edge because I can see unmixed copper around the edge of the pot. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute. It's just I can't hold a camera and mix all at the same time. You've got to remember, folks, this is not my full-time job, YouTube. Fixing boats is my full-time job, and so I don't have a production team. Everything you see, I do, from filming to editing to buying lights to buying microphones and all that sort of shit. All that sort of stuff, sorry, keeping it clean. Right, this is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, so you can dump that in now because we're pretty much there. And I'll give that a good mix up. Right, Sean, can you give this a gentle mix? And I'm going to show the viewers what it looks like. Well done, Sean, lovely job. So that is what the mixed Coppercoat looks like, and we just need to chuck some thinners in that now, just to make it easier to apply. It's a very, very warm day today, and it's only going to get warmer. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning at the moment, so this is going to start curing fairly rapidly, so we've got to get it on. The thinners is going to go in. This is just isopropanol. It's a type of alcohol, and we're going to give it what I call a good glug, and we'll see what that looks like. Ideally, you put all your thinners in at the start and you don't add thinners once you're applying it and once it's all mixed in, so you sort of want to get it right. Exactly how much you put in is dependent on the temperature on the day that you're applying it. The warmer it is, the more liquid the epoxy is, so I can't tell you need to put 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 mils in. You kind of got to do it to taste. Don't taste it, but to how it feels. And let me have a little stir just to see how it feels. Of course, what we're doing by thinning it is actually also making it easier for the copper to go down to the bottom of the pot. That actually feels about right to me. So it just needs a bit more of a stir in.
And that was almost just a layer across the top.
It was a layer, yeah. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say it was probably about 3 capfuls, if you imagine this little cap. So maybe, what's this? This is half a litre, so probably 50 mils, I would say, something like that. There we go. This is all consolidated nicely now. The thinner isn't sitting on the top anymore, and we're ready to pour it in the tray. I don't know, I'll just give it a teeny tiny little splash more, just because I know it's going to evaporate off fairly rapidly in a nice warm day like today. Ideally, if you're doing this outside, as I said, you want a nice warm day. If it's t-shirt weather, it's perfect. No rain, obviously, and if you've got a little bit of a breeze, that really helps. This is water-based, so if you've got a little bit of breeze going through, the water that is in the epoxy evaporates off, and then the epoxy will cure on the hull quite happily. That's ready to go. Going to pour some in the tray. I'm then going to start applying it, and before applying it into the tray each time, it's going to need a really good stir up, and ideally it wants a good stir up every now and again whilst it's just sitting, just to keep it kind of agitated, if you like. Now, your first coat of Coppercoat is always really disappointing, because you've got to put it on really quite thinly, and I'm just going to pop that down on the floor for a minute. You have to apply it super thin like this, and you will be able to see through it on the first coat, quite often the second coat, but by the third coat you should only see Coppercoat. So I'm going to roll it on like this, and that is enough for a first coat. Yes, you can absolutely see through it, but if you try and put too much on, it just sags and runs down the hull because of the weight of the copper. So I'm just going to crack on like this now, overlapping slightly, making sure it's fairly evenly applied, and then leave it alone. And there we go, that is the first coat all over. As you can see, it looks pretty awful, but that is totally normal. This is now already touch dry, so I can put that on there. It doesn't come off of my hands if I do it with a clean glove, just to prove it. There we go. And because it's all mixed up, I'm going to crack on straight with the second coat. Sean is just giving it a good agitate stir in the pot, and time to roll on coat number 2. That is now the second coat applied across most of the hull. The only bit that hasn't been done is the rudder, which is hanging at the back there, so it's still fairly patchy, which is what you'd expect on the second coat. Third coat will cover in the vast majority of that, so it will all go the lovely golden brown colour, and by the fourth coat there should be no hull or underneath surface visible at all. But we've just gone and bought our coffee, thank you Sean, and then we will mix up the next batch. So that first 2 coats, that was 1 litre of material mixed up, so we've got another 3 litres to apply, so that means we're going to be putting on probably about 7 coats in all once we're done on this side. Sean is just mixing up the very last batch of Coppercoat to go on this side, so we've got about halfway down this side on the 5th coat. So half of it's with 4 coats, half of it has 5 coats, and it's starting to look much closer to being finished. It's a little bit stripy there in the middle, but that's because it's only just been applied and it's still very wet. And as we come closer to the bow, it comes a bit more uniform as the epoxy is kind of starting to cure. And we need to get the final litre on, and then we're going to call this port side of the boat done. If we go to the other side, you can see obviously that's what it looked like before, all sanded, and then here it is, all beautifully coated with Coppercoat. I think it's about 1 litre per 1 3/4 of one side, if that makes sense. So we'll have enough just to finish off this side, the 5th coat, and then put a 6th coat all the way down it, and possibly have a little bit left over as well. So 6 coats all over is going to be plenty to have a decent amount of material on there to sand back and burnish with some time. So what happens with Coppercoat is it will work really well, and then after a while it starts losing its effectiveness, and all you need to do is give it a burnish on the top surface, and that exposes fresh copper, and away it goes again. Apart from Sean just finishing off just a bit on the keel, just having a 7th coat there, and I have put a 7th coat just on the bow here to use up the last of the 5 litres, sorry, the last of the 4 litres for this side, and the rudder, this side is done. So we've got one final and very enjoyable bit to do left, which is going to be tricky holding a camera, but pulling the tape off is always one of the great joys of doing on the bottom of a boat. I'm just walking backwards, and at some point this is going to fall off, maybe onto the head of Sean. Mind your head, Sean. Hold on, I'm just going to have to grab it with my other finger. Expert camera work going on here. And it's going to fall off now because it stops right there. There we go. There it is, all the tape is off. And it's all looking shiny and new. I think it's time for a well-earned cup of tea. Although we haven't done too badly on the coffees today. Just got to come back tomorrow and do it all again. It's now the next day, and this has all cured, so it takes probably 24 to 48 hours to really go off completely, to completely cure, but I can certainly touch it, knock it about, scratch it with my nails, and it's not soft anymore. So I'm going to mask up on the other side and get that prepped and get all the things ready for Sean to come in so we can get the other side up here all done. Once this boat has been coated on both sides and it's had 24 hours to cure in here, it's going to go back outside, and we're going to have to do under the pads, and that's simply a case of putting some temporary supports in and then backing out these pads, giving it a little clean, wipe down sand, whatever, and do exactly the same process. So over a few hours we'll be able to get 5, 6, 7 coats on all the pads. Leave those pads off again for 24 hours, let it all cure, and then they can go back in, and the bottom is done. There is one final stage that will have to happen before the boat goes in the water. This just needs a braiding very slightly, so I'll get some 320 grit probably and just give this a rub all over. You can do it by hand, or we can do it with a sander if you have an interface disc on it, so it's nice and soft and squishy, and that just exposes the copper that's currently all coated in epoxy, and that just means that the copper in this turns to copper oxide as quickly as possible once the boat is immersed in the water, and it's the copper oxide that actually stops weed barnacles and all the sludge and slime from sticking to the hull. So here's a top tip for you if applying masking tape. I see people applying masking tape in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. I find the quickest, easiest and most accurate way to apply masking tape to a line is get your end on up here, pull out a decent arm length. I've probably gone over the top there, let's just wind a bit in. Had a bit of excitement there about showing you this. Get a decent amount in your hand and push it down with your left finger and control where it goes with your right hand, so you can move this up and down and you eyeball it as you pop it on, and you just push it down with your left hand as you move your right hand up and down, and then you get a super accurate straight line exactly where you want it. That's obviously, I'm saying left and right assuming you're right-handed like me, but do the same again. I'm pushing it down with my left hand and I'm moving my right hand up and down as required, just to get the point at which I'm pushing the tape down in exactly the right location. And trust me, I stick a lot of masking tape on a lot of boats, and over the years this is what I have found works as quickly and as accurately as possible. And then at the end I just fold it around the corner and then put a little loop in the tape here, so that when it comes to ripping it I'm not having to pick at the tape to get at it. I can just grab the end which is folded over and whip it off. The other thing I'll do now is I'm going to get a piece of tissue on my hand so I'm not transferring stuff onto the hull, and I'm going to rub my fingers down the tape with a piece of tissue on it, because the tissue provides a little bit of lubrication, if you like, that runs over the tape quite quickly, so it saves your fingers and also stops that transfer of any dirt or oil. There we go, folks, that is the starboard side done as well now, and I've got to be honest, I think the starboard side looks even better than the port side. We got a slightly better finish on it because we used some slightly different rollers, so I was really pleased with some Hamilton Prestige rollers that I bought to do this side because we were getting short, and they really were lovely for giving a really nice fine finish. So this boat is going to come back out of the tent tomorrow. It will be safe to be rained on by then. It will be nice and hard, so it still needs the patches to be done, but I'm going to give it a couple of days for this to really harden up nicely. Then some temporary stands will be put in. The cradle pads can be pulled out, and then the areas under the pads can get 5 coats or so. This side, well, might do 6 actually, because this side got 6 all over. I think the port side ended up getting 6 and then half a coat of a 7th coat over it as well, just to use up the material, and the rudder got 7 as well. So it has been very, very well coated with Coppercoat. Plenty of material there to give it a sand over and burnish, and it should last a very long time. Here's a little view coming around the back as well. That looks rather nice from the back. And the rudder is here as well. Whilst we were doing the starboard side, we put some extra coats just along the trailing edge here, because it ends in quite a sharp point, and as soon as you go near that with some sandpaper or anything to clean the rudder, you'll go through the copper. So we've got extra coats on the back there, so the extra coats probably have given it about 10 or 12 coats along that trailing edge. Same on the back of the keel as well, because that comes to a slightly sharper point as well. That has had probably 10 coats, maybe 12, just along those very back edges, so that when the boat is cleaned, we don't go straight through the copper. Well folks, the boat is now back outside, and this is not Countess Charlotte. This is Countess Charlotte over here. What actually happened was I showed the owner of that Contessa, called Peregrine, what we've done on the bottom of this, and he went, "Oh, that looks good. Can I have that as well?" So so I have two boats which are copper coated right next to each other, and I'm afraid I forgot I was making a video when I was finishing off this one, but you can see here the patches have been done, and I'll show you how I did that on the boat next door, fortunately. So it's all worked out quite well. So if you look behind, you can see this here is the cradle support, and in here we've got some temporary supports that are supporting the boat. I'll see if I can get you a better shot. There we go. And all I had to do on Lottie next door was just sand the areas back that just need a little bit of prep, and then come in and apply the 6 coats of copper that were needed to match the hull. Now actually I think the finish on this boat is slightly better than the finish on Lottie. It's hard to tell really, but they both look pretty lovely. By complete coincidence, as I was coating this, where are we? We're on Thursday today, last Friday. As I was coating this in the shed, the founding director of Coppercoat Aqueous Marine Coatings popped his head round the door and went, "Oh, hello, what are you doing here?" And he came and took some photographs and was very impressed by the Solent Boat Butler finish that I get on Coppercoat, which was very pleasing and very nice. So I doubt he's watching this, but if you are, nice to meet you again. And I think that is going to bring this episode to a close. Thank you very, very much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It makes a massive difference to the growth of the channel, and to those that support the channel financially using that link that's down in the description. Thank you very, very much. That PayPal link just brings in enough cash to pay for microphones when I drop them in the sea, and pays for software and things like that. So thank you to those that have donated. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.